DC versus Vampires, issue 2, James Tynion IV and Matthew Rosenberg writing with Otto Schmidt on the art. So, what's interesting about this book is that we just set up the fact that Batman got some information at the end of last issue. Last issue was Andrew Bennett. It was him telling his story with the twist of Hal Jordan already being a vampire. So this issue was like, okay, here's what the book's actually going to kind of be like as we go forward, because Batman calls in the Bat family to a meeting, right? At least most of them. And I mean, there's a scene at the start as well with Anton Arcane getting killed by Hal Jordan. But
I do love that it's very much the Arcade from early Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And he's monologuing. It's like, who's ever there, just know it. Hal takes him out without any issue. Yeah, it's fantastic.
But we cut to the mansion, and Dick's showing up, and Barbara's kind of like sunbathing, but in her, I mean, she's not really, she's just kind of going for a nap, I think, but she's lying out in the deck chair, and there's a bit of banter, and Damien's there, Tim's there, Cass is there in her Batgirl outfit, and Alfred's alive. So that's kind of, it goes back to what I was saying last issue, how you had the Wonder Twins in the Hall of Justice. It's kind of like, it's kind of loosely based on recent continuity, but not just a little off.
It's kind of like the best of continuity, right? Whatever works. Which in a book like this, I am more than fine. Same with like Deceased. Well, it's whatever you need it to be. Yeah,
one of the things that I like about this though is that Batman brings up the Mad Monk, which is a story. I'm sure there was maybe other versions of it, but the version I know of it, which was the Mad Monk, was the sequel to Batman the Monster Men. It was the what's his name, Matt something, Matt Wagner.
Wagner.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, here's a couple of like early Batman stories post year one. Like that was the idea of those stories, and it was Batman encountered a vampire basically, right? And he says here that this Mad Monk was his first encounter with the supernatural. So I kind of like the idea that they're pulling on this and saying, okay, this is almost like, what if the ultimate downfall of the DCU was vampires? So we're going to actually try and tie in things from DC's history to like sort of set up their understanding of vampires in the context. So they're all getting cups of tea or whatever, and what I kind of dug about this is it's actually a little bit later, but there's a moment later on where Damien spits out it's hot cocoa he's got because he didn't want tea
and marshmallows.
Yeah, and he spits it out, and he's like, "Did you poison our drinks, father?" And he's like, "No, I just made it with holy water to check you weren't vampires." And then Damien's like, "Alfred, may I have more cocoa? Mine spilled."
Yeah, the mine spilled broke me. Like I was like, "Oh man, this is such spot on writing."
Yeah, this was good Damien writing this issue. Obviously, it does intersect though with some other scenes. There's a scene where there's a bunch of B-list villains hanging around talking about what's going on.
How dare you call Brick B-list, sir?
Did you just hear the sentence you said? You're right. How dare I? C-list. C-list. Yeah, you're quite right.
Also, Treasure is there too. I think she's a little bit more than B-list.
Yeah, I'll be honest. There's the dude here that just looks like knockoff Lex Luthor, and it wasn't until someone said his name that I went, "Oh, that's who it is."
Everyman is knockoff Lex Luthor, if I remember right.
Okay.
That was right. in 52 where he's handing out superpowers.
Okay. Okay.
And so I thought this was Gizmo from the Fatal Five. And then I realized this is not the Fatal Five. Like, because you have the big strong dude, you have the redhead girl, you got the bald guy. And I was like, oh, and then I realized, oh no, that's Brick. And I don't know who the girl with red hair is. But they're talking about, the villains going missing in the past couple of weeks, and Green Arrow steps out of the show, because I thought this was going to be another Green Lantern comes out and kills them all kind of scene. Yeah. But Green Arrow steps out and says he's not there to fight him, but he does say that one of them's a vampire, and it turns out to be Everyman. And we get a cool action scene as he lunges at Oliver and he fires an arrow, and it dusts him. Not unlike the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he dusts midair, and it's a really cool little sequence. So it, I think we said last issue that Green Arrow being a vampire feels like a red herring, right? Yep. It feels like, no, Hal was the vampire. Oliver's going to turn out to be someone who's already kind of hunting things and tracking things down. I like though that the narrative point is we're going to have a showdown between Green Arrow and Green Lantern, the hard traveling heroes, who are always opposites. And even here, there's the vampire hunter and the vampire, and oh man, really good stuff.
Yeah, and there was some fun, debating between the back characters here, where they're talking about, well, if these vampires are real, if there is this stuff going on, because they're a little bit skeptical, still, but like, well, if this was going to happen, taking out the villains first would make more sense because they hide a lot of the time anyway, so we wouldn't notice until it was perhaps too late. So there's a bit of back and forth, and there was like, okay, well, who else would they target? Like, and Batman says, well, it's not just who would they kill, but who would they turn? Like, who would they turn into a vampire? So it's like, well, they'd probably want to kill the magic users and the telepaths because they could expose them. But who would they want to like turn? And so there's some interesting debating going on. It's like, who would they infiltrate hero-wise first? And they say, well, Titans, Outsiders, Birds of Prey, like, the Justice League would be too hard, right? Batman says that. It would be too hard for them to infiltrate the Justice League, and of course, he's a fool.
Yep. Because that's who they got to first, right?
Yeah.
It's Hal. And then, but I do like that page where you have, Damian with what looks like the Titans, and they're taking out something. And then you have the Outsiders and the Birds. So yeah, it's a real fun page. It's Otto Schmidt being able to flex his art muscles,
and it's a nice transition as well because it ends in Justice League, and then that actually leads into a scene at the Hall of Justice where Jaina is actually worried because if you recall last issue, her brother was put in a blender.
Yeah, he really took the form of water to a new level.
He was put in a blender and drank like a smoothie by Hal. So. Worth mentioning, and you'll notice here that Hal offers to like take her somewhere. I'm like, oh god, he's going to murder her too.
Yeah, but she, she stands up for herself. But I do like the Booster Gold because it's very on brand. Where she's like, I can't feel him anymore, and Booster's like, yeah, maybe he need a break from being felt by his sister. And I do love that the entire Justice League looks at him like, bro, that's insensitive.
Yeah.
He's like, what? So, like, they spend so much time together. Am I the only one that thinks it's weird? I can't be. Like, again, voice for Booster is very spot on.
Yeah, and then we get to the part where Batman has tested them all with holy water in their drinks to make sure that they're all still human. With the, I mean, that Coco, like, the way he throws it into the plant and then immediately asks for more, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. I also like that when you know this and you think back, like, Alfred trying to, telling Barbara, because she's complaining about being tired.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, Miss Gordon, you just have some tea. It'll pack a punch.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Batman makes him all hold a cross as well, just to really be sure, because, he's Batman. But he's like, hey, so here's all the sort of your vampire slayer weapons. And I do like that Dick sort of brings up, like, wait, so we're killing now? And Batman's like, well, they're vampires. They're already dead. It's not killing.
I feel like that's an asterisk, Like, still, like, if there's a cure for vampirism, right?
I mean, that's a big... I mean, this is the thing, though, right? Obviously I like to reference Buffy a lot when vampires come up, but that's the logic in that show, too, is that vampires are undead, so it's not murder, right? Whereas murdering a human being is a big deal. Like, that's something you don't cross the line and do.
But I do love that he's like, you can't kill them, they're already dead. And then cut to Damien with it.
He's like, yes.
So cool.
He's like, green light, baby. Green light. I'm on. So... I dig all this gearing up. I dig the planning. I like Alfred intentionally taking a sip of the tea. Just like, I trust that was an oversight in your part. And Bruce responds with, no, I had the boiler, like, blessed. So you had a bath last night, and if you were a vampire, you would have just burned to death.
But so, like, after seeing what we have with Green Lantern, I'm a little bit untrusting on some of these things. And I think that's the great thing that both Tynan and Rosenberg are doing well here, is there is a sense of paranoia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I double-checked everybody, but then I would think, like, well, Cass, right? She wears that full suit. We didn't see her take a drink of something, but then we see her holding the cross.
I presume that it didn't show you in panel, but she did take a sip with everyone else, yeah.
Right, but there's that sense of paranoia that it could be any of them.
And they pulled that great trick last issue where Hal was out of the sunlight, but it's only because his Green Lantern, bubble could protect him. So, all that stuff's fun. The final scene of the issue, though, is a really sad scene where Hal's invited Barry out for a chat on some, beach somewhere. And is like, hey, we've been friends for a long time, and if I was ever going to do anything important or big, I'd want you to be a part of it because you're my best friend, Barry. But unfortunately, I argued for you, but the others, my master, because he references his master a couple of times, so there's clearly like a main vampire baddie, but
right.
He's like, my master says no, because of your hunger, you would actually just kill everyone too quickly. Like you would drink the world dry. So unfortunately, you can't be turned. And he smushes Barry's neck. He kills him. He kills the Flash. And he says, I'm so sorry, Barry. I wanted to conquer the world with you. And he's crying blood as he says that. So this is like this really sad thing where he still obviously has some of the connections that he had as a human, but obviously he's evil now. So we have killed Barry Allen off in issue 2 of this. That's where we're at with this.
Yep. Which I was wondering how that was going to work, because once we got to Ollie, and we know he's one of the Slayers now, I was wondering how they're going to play off with Flash, because if someone's going to notice Hal not acting like Hal, it's going to be Barry. It's
very notable that so far the humans that are in on it are just humans. Like, and Batman even says, like, they're going to go after the metahumans because they're the ones who are going to be strong enough to fight them. So it's interesting that the Bat Family and Green Arrow so far are the ones that are kind of picking up this fight.
Right. Well, and I wonder how something like vampirism would affect Superman, right? Because he gets his powers from the sun.
Can it even, would their teeth go in? Like, I don't know.
Because what you talk about with magic is that it's not that Superman's vulnerable to magic. He's as vulnerable as everybody else is. So you got to wonder what kind of magic's at play with the vampires. But again, would the vampire, let's call it virus, even take hold in his system because of the sunlight? He's like a living solar battery. So that's an interesting.
Part of me thinks he would just blow up.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, or even with Wonder Woman, the whole, would she be able to be capable of deception, being that she's kind of the embodiment of truth?
I feel like she would have to conveniently stop touching the lasso. Like,
because she can't lie. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So there's a lot at play here when it comes to the Justice League.
Hey, that may be how they find out about Hal. What if I mean, I don't want to bad movie and all that, but what if we get like he sits on the lasso without realizing kind of moment, and that's how he reveals what he is now. Kind of, I don't know.
It's a bad movie moment. That's like one of the best moments in that bad movie. So take that what you will.
So no, this is a lot of fun. It's playing with things. I'm definitely not mad the idea of Dick, Babs, and Cass all being prominent characters, and Damien's writing in this is very good. Hal's been a really good villain actually so far.
I feel like a segment of the comic fandom would have, they've believed he's a villain for so long, so this is just them,
Plus, the staking with the arrow like midair, was really cool. So.
So cool. Yeah, Schmidt kind of is the perfect artist for this.
Joey is. I don't know if he ever did an American Vampire, but he does a very similar thing with the faces. The American Vampire did. Yeah.
It's Albuquerque-esque.
Yeah.
Where they go from regular to monstrous real easy through his art.
That's very good. And again, just to compare it to the hit television show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that way their face would change. They'd be normal humans, but then it would morph into the vampire face. Like, you kind of feel like it's doing that on the panel, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So, no, cool. What are you giving DC versus Vampires issue 2?
8.5.
I am going to concur with the 8.5. So, nice stuff.